Hey, Dr. Jose, I'll leave it here again with another episode with Office Hours with Dr. J. So, beginning of the semester, um, I find that a lot of students are really shy. It takes us a while to get out of our shell, and maybe we don't feel like we belong. And so, I'm sure there are a number of you out there who are familiar with what we often call imposter syndrome. And just a quick story. Um, and I remember being a freshman in college. Um, Came from a small town, Elsa, Texas, a really small town in South Texas, and I went away to Stanford University. And in high school, I thought I was pretty smart. I thought I was pretty sharp. And believe me, this doesn't have to be Stanford. It could be any university. It could be almost any environment, right? But that moment where you feel like at some point somebody's going to figure out I don't belong here. What am I? What are you doing here? And when I got to Stanford, my first class, the first class that I sat in, that's the way I felt. I felt like I was waiting for that moment when somebody was going to say, "What are you doing here? How did you get in?" And and it can keep you right. It's this feeling that can keep you from speaking up, from ever feeling like you belong. Um, and so, what I often share with students, right, if you're feeling like that, um, I think you have two options, at least two options that come to mind, right? You can sit silently, you can be quiet. And when you do that, you allow other people to tell a story about you, right? I often tell my students, if you're the student that's quiet, that sits in the back of the room, right? What story then does the professor tell about you, right? What story do they create about you? And let's say you're going through a hard time. Let's say you're struggling. Let's say you have a family emergency. Let's say somebody in the family gets sick. Let's say you're dealing with transportation issues, right? Then as a professor, right? And if you don't speak up, if you don't talk to me, what do I assume about you, right? And so for me, I think when I was faced with, do I speak up or do I allow myself to feel like I don't belong and I'm waiting for somebody to question what I'm doing there? Well, I chose to speak up, and I didn't do it necessarily in class. That took me a while to build up that courage. But what I did go do is I went to office hours. I went to every single office hours, like with every professor, and I introduced myself and I talked about where I was from, and I told them that I was nervous and that I wasn't sure that I belonged, but that I was going to work hard and I was going to do my best. And that went a long way to one, helping me feel confident, but also a lot of the professors told me they felt the same way. They shared their own experiences with imposter syndrome. They talked about their own experiences in higher ed. And I try to do the same with my students, right? I'm very open about my experiences. And so I just want to share that because, if you find yourself, right, we're at the beginning of a semester and you find yourself feeling like, I'm not sure I belong here. I don't understand what's going on. And maybe I feel like a fraud. Maybe I feel like this isn't the place for me or college isn't the place for me. Make sure you own your story. Whatever that story is, you own it. Don't allow somebody else to speak for you, and don't allow somebody else to tell a story for you. Own that story. I could have sat silently and I could have allowed anybody to tell a story about me. I could have allowed the professors to tell a story about me. But instead, I spoke up and I took control of my story. And so as you continue with this semester, right, and you get ready to go to class, and if you're feeling like this, think about this. Try this exercise on a sheet of paper. Ask yourself, what story do you want to tell? And write it down and keep that with you. Remind yourself, right, when faced with that opportunity, do I sit quietly or do I speak up? Do I allow somebody else to tell my story or do I tell my story? And hopefully you choose to tell your story, all right? Best of luck to you, and we'll see you again soon.